that red light is on. Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Carringer will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Carringer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight, I'm especially honored and thankful to be able to introduce someone who I'm so proud of and that I have been with since I was 2 weeks old. Yes, I'm going to tell everyone that I am 2 weeks older than you. I was always so proud of that until we turned 40, then we turned 50, and I'll just say etc. after that. Our moms are sisters and we are first cousins, but we have been raised to be more like brother and sister. We were together almost every day of our lives until our grandfather in Winsburg, Kentucky passed away, and Gerald's family decided to move from Knoxville to Winsburg, Kentucky to the family farm to help our grandmother. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Reverend Gerald Mullins, who's a native of Knoxville, and you can tell with the big orange tie, and he has had to fight many battles against the UK fans, but he always comes out true, orange and white. And so he's also a resident of Campbell County, which Dennis Powers will be getting his vote this next time because they're building a house in his district. And Gerald and his wife, Phyllis Mullins, who is up in the gallery, they've been married over 40 years. And Gerald is a retired middle school special education teacher, and his wife, Phyllis, is also a retired elementary education teacher. Gerald is a graduate of the University of the Cumberlands in Winsburg, Kentucky, where he also coached the golf team, and he is an accomplished musician who sings and plays every instrument that there is to play, and I'm very serious about that. I guess since I'm 2 weeks older than him, it would be fair to say that I taught him everything he knows. But he is the father of Aaron Wins, who's an elementary school teacher in Owensburg, Kentucky. And Blake Mullins, his son, is up here in the gallery. And he's an attorney with the Griffin Law Group in Sparta, Tennessee. Blake and his wife, April, who's also up there, they are expecting their first child in August. So Gerald and Phyllis are going to be first-time grandparents. I'm so thrilled for them about that. Reverend Mullins is the founder and pastor of Grace Christian Fellowship Baptist Church in Winsburg, Kentucky. So thank you, and help me in welcoming Reverend Gerald Mullins tonight.
Thank you. Let me say it's a distinct honor, privilege to be here today. This is a big highlight of my life, and truly honored to be here. And I love my cousin like my sister, and she's just what's needed here. She's a fire plug, and we're proud of her. So if you would bow your heads with me as we pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings you send our way. Lord, we thank you, Lord, that, Lord, we are residents, citizens of this great nation, and Lord, of this great state of Tennessee. And Lord, I just pray today that you be with our elected officials, Lord, as they represent each citizen in this great state. And Lord, that you would guide and direct them in every aspect of every decision they make. And may your will be done in everything here this evening. And Lord, we thank you again, Lord, for everything you do for us, and many times for grace and mercy you send our way. And Lord, I just pray that you bless our state, bless our nation once again. And Lord, may we truly keep our eyes upon you and realize that you are the answer to every problem that we face every day. And we thank you. You never leave us. You never forsake us. We ask this now in the wonderful, precious name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Representative Carringer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Would everyone stand and salute and pledge our great American flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Ms. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 92 members present.
Let the journal reflect Representative Griff is excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring. We have two presentations. Representative Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant at Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Representative Gillespie, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 992 by Representative Gillespie, a resolution to recognize and commend Officer Christopher L. Van Arsdale and K-9 Anthony of the Memphis Police Department for their life-saving actions. Whereas it is fitting that the members of this General Assembly should recognize those exceptional law enforcement officials whose commitment to excellence and dedication to their communities are a credit to this state. And whereas Officer Christopher L. Van Arsdale of the Memphis Police Department and his K-9 partner Anthony are among the most skilled and competent law enforcement officers that Tennessee has to offer. And whereas called to assist a nearby jurisdiction, Officer Van Arsdale and K-9 Anthony responded to a request from the Bartlett Police Department involving a missing person on the night of October 22nd, 2021. And whereas searching in the darkness in the dense woods and underbrush of Nesbitt Park, the Bartlett Police Department were about to suspend the search for the missing individual until daylight when Officer Van Arsdale and K-9 Anthony arrived. And whereas a bloodhound, K-9 Anthony soon picked up a scent and went down a path almost a mile into the woods where he crossed a wooden bridge leading officers to discover a Gatorade bottle and cigarette pack, and upon further search, noticed a body that had fallen approximately 20 feet down a ravine. And whereas upon reaching the missing victim, the officers discovered that the woman was unconscious. And whereas the training and tracking skills of Officer Van Arsdale and K-9 Anthony undoubtedly saved the life of the victim, who likely would not have survived her fall. And whereas it is most fitting that we pause to honor this exceptional law enforcement officer and his K-9 partner at this time. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives by the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we honor and commend Officer Christopher L. Van Arsdale of the Memphis Police Department and K-9 Anthony for their life-saving actions and their laudable service to this state, and extend to them our best wishes in every future success.
Representative Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Fellow members, I just wanted, I only have one floor presentation this year, and I read about the story and heard about it a couple months ago and was fortunate to actually meet K-9 Anthony and Officer Van Arsdale a couple weeks ago. I'm a true believer in everything that police around the country do. They protect us every day and evening, and one of the things that they don't get a whole lot of recognized for is exactly what happened here, and that is they save lives. There are police officers every day across the country that go out of their way, sometimes out of their jurisdiction even, and they save lives. And I just wanted to bring that to y'all's attention and make sure that both the Memphis Police Department was recognized, Officer Van Arsdale was recognized. His family is here, his mom and dad and sister are here, as well as some of the command staff from MPD and the K-9 unit. And with that, Mr. Speaker, if I could ask Lieutenant Colonel Barnard to come up and say a few words.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead, Lieutenant Colonel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to say thank you to this body and to Representative Gillespie for recognizing Officer Van Arsdale and K-9 Officer Anthony for their tremendous work. And we appreciate everything you do from the Memphis Police Department. Thank you.
Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could please ask you to come down to the well for a picture. That one sent in there as well.
Representative Wright, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, please escort the guests to the well. Representative Wright, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
Senate Joint Resolution 19 of the Third Extraordinary Session by Representative Wright, a resolution to honor the memory of Staff Sergeant Ryan Knauss, United States Army. Whereas our nation was conceived by individuals who are willing to sacrifice their personal safety and concerns to ensure our individual and collective freedom, and the volunteer state has been the home of many valiant men and women who have performed above and beyond the call of duty. And whereas thousands of Tennesseans continue this time-honored tradition of volunteerism through service in the armed forces, including the United States Army, sadly, many of these honored defenders of our nation and its liberties have fallen throughout our country's history. And whereas Staff Sergeant Ryan Knauss of Corton was one of 13 American Armed Forces members who were killed in a bombing attack at the Kabul airport in Afghanistan on August 26, 2021. And whereas based at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, he was a member of the 9th Battalion, 8th Psychological Operations Group in 2017 and 2018. He completed a 9-month tour in Afghanistan as a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division. And whereas Staff Sergeant Ryan Knauss served with great courage and gallantry, giving his life in service to his country, and for that ultimate sacrifice, he deserves proper recognition for heroism both in the United States Army and in society today. Whereas Sergeant Knauss' dedication to excellence in the military and his love of his family, his fellow soldiers, and his country stand as enduring examples of all the characteristics that have ensured the continued freedom of our nation and the preservation of its ideals over the course of our history. And whereas this General Assembly joins with Staff Sergeant Ryan Knauss' family and friends in mourning the untimely death of this courageous young Tennessean. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the state of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that we honor the memory of Staff Sergeant Ryan Knauss of the United States Army, reflecting upon his impeccable character and stalwart commitment to living the examined life with courage and conviction. We extend our profound condolences to his family for the loss of this valiant American hero.
Representative Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You've heard the resolution. Words do not exist to express our heartfelt sympathy and gratitude to the family of Staff Sergeant Ryan Christian Knauss. There are many members of the House that are former members of the armed forces. If I could ask you for just a moment to stand with me and give this mom a salute. Thank you, members. This is Mom Paula. Mr. Speaker, may it be appropriate to hear a word from Mom?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Ryan made a difference. May we all make a difference. May everything that you choose reflect the difference you're going to make on the people that you serve. Ryan had men under him and men above him, men and women who've served faithfully and are still serving faithfully. He was one of many. And until my last breath, I will not forget those who are serving in our country that are the 1% that keeps our back strong. May we always honor those who wear the military uniform and give them the honor they deserve in every walk of life, from the time they enter until the time they leave. May we honor the veterans and give them the support they deserve. May we help those young ones that are coming in know that we care, that they're going in as 18-year-olds to serve our country, our babies, going in to serve our country, coming out as men and women, strong. May God give us the strength to know that we make a difference, just as they have. Thank you.
Representative Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would you please join us for a photograph? Military members, please join us. And would military members please join us?
We are under welcoming and honoring. Representative Carringer, would you like to be recognized, please?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think my Powell High School football team is up here on this side. If the Powell High School football team, if you're here, would you all please stand up? I always have to aggravate one of my other fellow representatives over here to my left side, but District 16 is the district of champions. Powell High School was the champions in football this year. So I just wanted to welcome them here and pray for y'all to have a safe ride home. I know the team would love for you all just to let them spend the night here in Nashville. I'm sure they would not object to that. But anyway, thank you all so much for coming. Again, congratulations for being the champions. And you're always a champion with me. So have a safe trip home.
Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Russell and I would like to welcome Monroe County leadership to the chamber. I think most of them maybe have just slipped out to dinner, but we've got a couple up here in the gallery, but let's make them feel welcome tonight. Thank you very much.
Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It has been widely reported that April 11th of the year 1954 is officially considered the most boring day ever. Now, this was determined by a Cambridge computer scientist who put in over 3 million facts. The one fact that he left out was the day that Sam Whitson was born. Happy birthday, Colonel Whitson.
Representative Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a guest here tonight that is a reporter for our local online newspaper, but is kind of shadowing me and doing a little article. So I want to welcome him. Josh Griffin is up here in the stands, and he's a transplant here from Texas, but we're glad to have him in Tennessee.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many years ago, I had a great privilege of being a high school teacher and a baseball coach. And you get very well acquainted with those kids that are on your teams and their families, and you all become one big family. But there was this one kid on my team that had a little brother, and he was a little bitty runt that ran around and got into everything. Well, when I finished coaching and moved on in life, I had no idea that one year during the General Assembly, I would walk in and see that this young man had risen to such greatness. And today is his birthday. Mr. Colton Teal, that works in the clerk's office, was that young man. And so happy birthday, buddy.
Representative Alexander.
I would ask my fellow legislators to rise with me and to honor. Last Friday, we lost a mayor who had been our mayor for 23 years in Washington County. Prior to that, he'd been on the county commission for 17 years. Because of him, we have a courthouse and so many things in our county. And tonight, we lay him to rest in my town. So I ask that you just take a moment of silence to remember his family. His name was George James. His wife is Sandy. His sons, Tim and Patrick. Just thank you for this time. Amen.
Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week my community had a death, another fentanyl death. We're seeing it played out across the state. Tonight I've got some guests in the audience. Carrie Ford does a TV show called In Your Corner Ministries. Tim Cawthorn, and I've got Pastor Jeff Gandy. Tomorrow, I've invited all the lawmakers to come to the 8th floor. Kerry has produced a documentary. He's got a TV show, In Your Corner Ministries. It's aired on 200 stations worldwide. He's a former boxing promoter and has been a great mentor for kids. The Hohenwald community came together to help combat the fentanyl and the drug problem. Wanted y'all to watch this. They broke it down to a 30-minute section. Kerry's goal is to show this state or nation, just statewide. And I know a lot of lawmakers care about this issue. Dr. Terry, Tim Hicks, Curcio, Faison, Pat Marsh, Mary Littleton, Bob Freeman, and others. And I called y'all out specifically because y'all's names just popped in my head because I know I've heard y'all be passionate about speaking. So if y'all could give it a round of applause for Kerry, Pastor, and Tim. Y'all give them a round of applause, please, and come watch the movie tomorrow, 12 to 3 o'clock. Thank you, Kerry.
Any further welcome on? Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Speaker. Members, if you will rise for a moment, please. In Sumner County, we've had a long-time county commission member, Mr. Mo Taylor, who unfortunately over the weekend dropped dead of a heart attack. He was running for reelection, running as an independent. I mean, he's from the northern part of our district, and his family is mourning today. And if you would just bow your heads for just a moment of silence for Mr. Mo Taylor. Thank you, members.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of resolutions.
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, refer to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing line on the desk placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills, Senate bills on first consideration.
Leader Lambert, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that Senate bills 2,219, 2,547, 2,628, 2,631, 2,649, and 2,827 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of their companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration, petitions and memorials, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentlemen, moves passage of the consent calendar, probably second to Mr. Clerk. Any objections have been filed.
Mr. Speaker, item 16, House Joint Resolution 1091 has been objected to by Chairman Todd. Item 22, House Joint Resolution 1097 has been objected to by Representative Garrett. Item 25, House Joint Resolution 1100 has been objected to by Chairman Sapicki. Finally, Mr. Speaker, item 39, House Joint Resolution 1114 has been objected to by Chairman Moon.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have to confirm with the leaders. Item 30, HJR 1105, honoring Representative Wendell's father. I ask all those voted in affirmative be added as co-prime sponsors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Exclusions duly noted without objection. Anyone else seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none. We're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no names, one present, not voting.
Having received a constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call first bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Resolution 170 by Chairman Powers and others, a resolution to honor and commend the Keystone XL pipeline workers for their commitment to America's energy independence. Mr. Speaker, is previously considered and reset for today's regular calendar.
Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption of H.R. 170.
Chairman Powers moves adoption. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments.
Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The H.R. 170 is the Keystone Pipeline is an expansion of our existing North American pipeline, and it would carry 830,000 barrels of crude oil from Alberta, Canada to Nebraska daily at its peak. It would have been completed this year if the project had not been canceled by the current administration. The United States gets 81% of its total energy from oil, coal, and natural gas, all of which are fossil fuels. We depend on these fuels to heat our homes, run our vehicles, power our industry and manufacturing, and provide us with electricity. H.R. 170 honors the 8,000 workers that lost their jobs and recognizes the importance of completing the Keystone Pipeline to help make our country energy independent again. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Powers renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Resolution 170 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Owls aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 77, 11 nays, 4 present, not voted.
House Resolution 170, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare adopted without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2309 by Representative Freeman and others relative to state government.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2309 on third and final consideration.
Representative Freeman moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment does rewrite the bill. We'll defer to the sponsor for further explanation. We move to adopt.
Chairman Keesling moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Freeman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess 2 years ago, I had a constituent come to me with a problem. He had a young man that worked in his restaurant and had worked for him for 3, 4, 5 years. And he was trying to give him a promotion and let him wait tables. And when he went to go get his ABC card to serve alcohol, he was denied. And when we started running it down, I found out that there was a loophole that this aims to fix. And I'm going to read exactly what this bill does. Notwithstanding any other provision in this section, a public benefit does not include a professional or commercial license for the purpose of this section. To be eligible for a professional or commercial license, an applicant must show that the applicant is either a United States citizen or authorized under federal law to work in the United States as verified by the SAVE program. I've had a couple of questions from other members if this was an amnesty bill or a pathway to citizenship or any number of things, and it does none of that. This is simply allowing people that are lawfully legally within the United States and lawfully and legally authorized to work, the ability to get a professional license. And with that, I stand ready to answer any questions. I renew my motion.
Representative Freeman renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Freeman, those who are applying, are they legal under DACA?
Representative Freeman.
Some could definitely be legal under DACA.
Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because of that, I will not be supporting this bill. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution is clear about the enumerated power of naturalization and immigration. That power lies with Congress. It does not lie with the executive branch. DACA was instituted by President Obama, therefore makes it unconstitutional, which would then make them here illegally. So I won't be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Representative Freeman.
Thank you, and fully appreciate your comments. And this is not dealing with that. This is simply people that are here, that went to school here, that were educated with our kids, and we should give them the opportunity to make a living. They are, again, legally, lawfully here. They have to be verified through the SAVE program. If that status were to ever change, it does not continue past that status. This is simply allowing them to work, to make sure that they can have meaningful employment and provide a service back to our state.
President Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sponsor, when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, my understanding of this bill is it would apply to folks like some of those international students that come to my hometown to Lebanon, go to Cumberland University. Maybe they're international athletes, but they graduate and their degree would normally align them with some sort of a professional licensure program. They decide maybe they want to stick around in Middle Tennessee and maybe get a nursing degree and work in Nashville. My understanding is that's really kind of what this bill was for, but I am hearing a lot of this, but I was under the impression, and maybe somebody can clarify this for me, but I thought folks that were considered DACA were illegal. They were not here on a work permit. They were, I think you spoke a little bit about that, but the intention of this bill is to get some of these folks that are international students that want to stay here with a professional licensure and do something like nursing, which there is a shortage of. Is that correct?
Representative Freeman.
That's exactly right. And but by some estimation, there's as many as 10,000 people that we could immediately license to put into the workforce to begin having a meaningful impact into our economy. We currently have about 77,000 workers collectively that we're short filling these positions. And this is a first step in trying to get folks into the workforce and become involved in our economy. Thank you.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the sponsor, is there anything that prevents these people from being employed in the United States military and serving the country before they try to gain benefits from it?
Representative Freeman.
No, sir.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to agree with my colleagues. If they have a path to employment that would provide a path to citizenship, which happens in the military, I think they should avail themselves of that right. Consequently, I can't support your bill. Thank you.
Representative Freeman.
Thank you for those comments. Again, this is not designing or creating a pathway to citizenship in any way, shape, or form. This is simply allowing people who are legally within the United States and legally and lawfully authorized to work to get a professional license so that they can provide for their families.
Representative Sparks.
Would sponsor yield?
Representative Freeman.
Yes.
Yeah. What was the number you just mentioned on workforce? How many?
Representative Freeman.
There are 10,000 people that we could immediately put into the workforce, and some estimations we have about 77,000 shortage in the workforce.
Representative Sparks.
I'm going to support your bill, but for the record, federal government's got to tighten up on our border, no doubt. I'm in Rutherford County. My mom's in a nursing home. Many of y'all have heard me talk about it. My mom's from Scotland. I'm probably the only half immigrant maybe up here. And really proud of my father's military service fighting the Nazis and flying bombing raids over Germany. But, you know, we've got a workforce development problem. My county can't get people. The nursing home staffing is short. One of the nurses who gives my mother medicine just quit in the middle of the shift. I do see a lot of immigrant folks that are working, that are doing the jobs that many of us may not be doing. So I'm going to support your bill, and I want to encourage others to support it with me. Thank you, sir.
Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is only dealing with the ones that are here legally, correct?
Representative Freeman.
Yes, sir. And you actually have to go through the SAVE program, which is a federally, it's a federal database that identifies people who are legally authorized to work. So it's a double catch.
Representative Gant.
So, but again, it's only addressing those that are here legally, correct?
Representative Freeman.
Yes, sir.
Representative Gant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Whitson.
I move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2309 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 56, 35 nays, 3 present, unvoted.
House Bill 2309 having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2789 by Representative Powell and others relative to unlawful exposure. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2535.
Representative Powell moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2535, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2016, we enacted legislation dealing with unlawful exposure and specifically with revenge porn. And a constituent came to me, Ms. Porteous, here in Nashville, and brought out a couple of issues that have been going down and happening in the courtroom. The essentially prosecutorial problems, two specific things. Specifically, somebody might be engaging in a sexual act, but they have their clothes on, and so that didn't meet the definition of the law. And the other one is it might not be clear who the identifiable person was because you couldn't see their face. And so what this does is it adds those two additional provisions in to make sure that we are adding and distributing an image of an identifiable person engaged in sexually explicit conduct, the definition of the offense of unlawful exposure, adding a definition for identifiable person, expanding the current language to include sexually explicit conduct is defined in the code. So this will help close those loopholes and make sure that we have very strong revenge porn laws here in Tennessee. And with that, I move passage. Renew my motion. Move passage on third and final consideration.
Representative Powell moves passage of Senate Bill 2535 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1's in the Senate bill. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Powell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I explained the bill. I renew my motion.
Representative Powell renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Weaver.
Thank you, Speaker. Representative, I just have a question. What is the punishment of violation of this law? I might have missed that. Is there any kind of enforcement?
Representative Powell.
Yeah. This doesn't change the current punishment. Again, this would go. Part of that comes down to a jury in the trial and what they deem appropriate. This is just dealing with the expanding the definition of revenge porn in case someone was to distribute an image where they might be engaged in a sexual explicit act, but they were clothed, or if it wasn't fully abundantly clear their identity, it would be up to a jury if they wanted to take it that route to make sure that someone might be identified by something else besides their face. Say they had a tattoo, but it was clear that it was a sexually explicit image. This would clear up those different instances.
Very nice. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. We are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2535, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 2535, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reeks series table. Mr. Clerk, call the next bill.
House Bill 1878 by Chair Lady Littleton and others relative to sexual offenses.
10 and 2. Representative Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1878 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Littleton moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 1878 expands the authorized use of sex offender registration fees by the registering agency to include the investigation of sexual offenses and the purchase of specialized equipment for use in the investigation of sexual offenses. With that, I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Littleton renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1878, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Lamberth, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
House Bill 1878, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reeks series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1957 by Representative Gillespie and others relative to enforcement body camera video. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2061.
Representative Gillespie moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2061. Properly second without objection. So ordered. Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2061 on third and final consideration.
Representative Gillespie moves passage of Senate Bill 2061 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to move this amendment to the heel of the amendments.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Call up next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Government Operations Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, filed as House Amendment 2. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the same as the Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 2 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body back to the heel of the amendments. House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Move to withdraw, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this does is a couple years ago, we allowed police officers to wear body cameras on them, and it was due to sunset this coming summer. And what this does is it extends it for another 5 years and adds some clarity to certain settings such as nursing homes, hospitals, schools, where minors are present, where certain information will be redacted and remain redacted. And with that, I renew my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Gillespie renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2061 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Lamberth, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 2061 and received constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion reeks there stable. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2159 by Chairman Whitson and others relative to election security.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2159 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Whitson moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2159 was drafted in operation with the Secretary of State and my local election officials. This is a pilot program that only applies to Williamson County for election year 2022 for the 3 elections. That's the May local primary, the August local general, and state primary, and the November general. This would be a pilot program of election audits. It will require the polling place where the precinct-based optical scanners are utilized. The Election Commission should post instructions saying, please check the recorded votes on your ballot before inserting that in the scanner. It requires voting machines be checked to ensure proper firmware is loaded. and also directs that the county election commission will be required to randomly select at least one precinct-based optical scanner from a convenience center in the county, and at least one precinct to audit the absentee by mail ballots cast in the precinct. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Whitson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2159 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, the same member was change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, one nay.
House Bill 2159 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reads serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, House Bill 2284 by Representative Beck relative to holographic wheels.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to passage of House Bill 2284 on third and final consideration.
Representative Beck moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Farmer moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, drugs have done a horrible thing to our society. One of the things is to inhibit the passing of property. With this bill, suspicious circumstances would apply suspicious circumstances in cases where contested holographic wills were written 30 days before the testator's suicide. This would allow for testimony in order to recreate his, and I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2284 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, as any member would change your vote. Curcio, aye. Camper, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
House Bill 2284 has received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reads serious table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1943 by Representative Beck relative to tort settlements involving minors. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2201, please.
Representative Beck moves substitute conform to Senate Bill 2201, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2201 on third and final consideration.
Representative Beck moves passage of Senate Bill 2201 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Beck, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Code is presently silent as to a minimum amount for a minor settlement. A minor settlement requires that the children are taken out of school and the family has to go to court. If this bill will make it, if you are represented by counsel and the child does not have a disability, the minor settlement is not required by law. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Beck renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2201, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 2201 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed. I objection. The motion reads serious table. Bob, next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2673 by Representative Sexton of Granger relative to anti-Semitism in education.
Representative Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2673 on third and final consideration.
Representative Sexton moves passage, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Sexton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is it gives us a definition for anti-Semitic acts. Presently, we really don't have any way of knowing or understanding exactly what is an act against the Jews or the state of Israel. So what this bill does is it adopts the IHRA, which is the institution, it's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. So that is the definition that is presently adopted by 37 countries, several of our states, our State Department, Department of Justice, Department of Education, 314 educational institutions globally. So that's what this bill does, is it gives LEAs or other higher learning institutions a guideline as to what is anti-Semitic act. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Sexton renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor. 2 questions. How did you choose this definition?
Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I stated, this has been recognized by 865 different entities worldwide, and it's been included in 37 countries and several of our states here in the United States. The Department of State, Department of Justice, the Department of Education, and 314 educational institutions globally. So that's how that we develop this as would be the definition.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor, for explaining that. I just want to make sure, is this definition intended in any way to limit the complaints from individuals who allege anti-Semitism having occurred on a state government entity property or in a school or a school of higher education?
Representative Sexton.
I'm not sure I totally understand your question. If I may, could you be a little more definitive?
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, is the definition that you have selected intended in any way to limit complaints of anti-Semitism in any of these subject locations?
Representative Sexton.
Absolutely not. It's not intended in any way to limit complaints. It's basically to bring to light what actually is an act of anti-Semitism.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to make sure and get that on the record. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, what is that definition? Can you read it to us?
Representative Sexton.
Yes, I can. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism and directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish communities, institutions, and religious facilities. To guide the IHRA in this work, the following examples may serve
as illustrations. Manifestations might include the targeting of the state of Israel, conceived as a Jewish collectivity. However, criticism of Israel, similar to that levied against any other country, cannot be regarded as anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism frequently charges Jews with conspiring to harm humanity, and it's often used to blame Jews for why things go wrong. It is expressed in the speech, written, visual forms, and actions, and employs sinister stereotypes and negative character traits. Contemporary examples of anti-Semitism in public life, the media, schools, workplace, and the religious sphere could, taken into account the overall context, include, but not limited to, and here's a list of some, not limited to, but some of them. Calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews in the name of or radical ideology or an experiment viewed of religion. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such as the power of Jews as collective, such as specifically but not exclusively the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions, accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for the real or imaginative wrongdoing committed by a single Jewish person or group, or even for acts committed by non-Jews. Denying the fact, the scope, mechanism, in other words, gas chambers, or intentionally of the genocide of the Jewish people at the hands of the National Socialist Germany and its supporters and accomplices during World War II, the Holocaust. Accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state, or inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. Accusing Jews citizens of being more loyal to Israel or the alleged proprieties of Jewish worldwide than the interest of their own nations. Denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination. In other words, by claiming that the existence of the state of Israel is a racist endeavor. Applying double standards by requiring of or the behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. Using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism, in other words, claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood Belial to characterize Israel or Israelis. Drawing comparisons to contemporary Israel policies to that the Nazis, holding the Jews collectively responsible for actions of the state of Israel.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I couldn't hear anything he said, so I'm gonna have to ask him to tell me what that definition is one more time. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that. But I do have a serious question though. One, wouldn't this be covered under the CRT bills that have already, in any of those actions that you read in the definition will be covered under all of the CRT bills that's been passed down in this chamber for the last couple of years. Am I correct?
Representative Sexton.
Give me just a second, and I can tell you the difference.
That's fine. He's looking for the
The
answer.
CRT is a system of beliefs about what race is as a construct that rejects the ideas that individuals should be judged on the character and their individual actions. Adopting this, the IHRA definition will provide an objective means by which to judge whether specific actions are anti-Semitic.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Sponsor. And I'm okay with that, and I understand what you're doing. But do we have definitions for Asian hate, Hispanic hate, African American hate, also that we're putting in the Tennessee Code?
Representative Sexton.
Not that I'm aware of, but here is one statistic that I'll give you. And this is according to the FBI's hate crime. According to the FBI's hate crime statistics, Jews continue to be the most targeted group of hate crimes in the United States. So I don't know if there's others, cultural groups that have that, but that's the reason that I'm bringing this one.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Sponsor. And where are the most hate crimes directed in the state of Tennessee?
Representative Sexton.
I apologize, but I don't have that information.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Representative Hardaway, you were asking to be notified, recognized at Chairman Dixie's desk.
Thank you, Speaker. And I was trying to follow along a couple of things I didn't quite catch. You made reference to the right of Israel to exist as a state. Would you go back over that again?
Representative Sexton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Take me just a minute to find that. Says, I don't know if this is what you're referring to, applying double standards by requiring of it a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. So that's what you're referring to.
Representative Hardaway.
Well, I'm not sure. That's why I heard Israel as a state. So I thought you had some language specifically addressing that. And the reason I asked is to make sure that you're not saying that there can be no discussion about a two-state solution. You're not banning that type of discussion, are you?
Representative Sexton.
No, this has nothing to do with your First Amendment rights. You can challenge anything. I think what you were referring to is accusing the Jews as a people or Israel as a state of inventing or aggravating the Holocaust. That's the only place I know of that I mention Israel as a state. But to answer your question, no, this has nothing to do with First Amendment rights. You can still challenge anything like this. This is specific on anti-Semitism. It's a hate crime. There shouldn't be any hate crimes against whites, blacks, Jews, Asians, anyone.
Representative Hardaway.
And just for clarification, for everybody's clarity, you don't care who it is. It could be Proud Boys, neo-Nazis, etc. You're talking about the act itself. Doesn't matter who does it.
This bill doesn't pertain to that. This is just anti-Semitism. Representative Sexton.
That is correct. It doesn't pertain to this. The main objective of this bill is to establish a definition, an understanding of what anti-Semitism is, because to present, there is no guidelines for any schools or any higher education to know how to go about seeing what is or is not anti-Semitic.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. And you had a discussion earlier about reported state reported hate crimes. Let me suggest to you that it's not about whether the crimes are occurring, but I think the key word here is reported. I don't know whether there are more hate crimes against African Americans or Jews, but I can tell you that all of the crimes, the hate crimes committed against African Americans are not reported. And I can tell you that the majority of them are not reported. So I would suggest that there's not necessarily a good comparison, even using FBI data. Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Boyd.
Move previous question.
Previous question's been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2673 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays, one present, not voting.
House Bill 2673 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2730 by Representative Ogles relative to crime on college campuses.
Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move it passes House Bill 2730 on third and final consideration.
Representative Ogles moves passage, probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This piece of legislation changes the report that's done every year to the General Assembly by the TBI. Right now, the TBI certifies a report to the General Assembly about crimes on our college campuses. This bill simply changes to the fact that the president, the chancellor, or the representative designee shall be added to the report. It also enables the comptroller of the Treasury to conduct audits of the report to verify the information within the report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Representative Ogles renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a follow-up. I know you and I have read these TBI crime reports. I think maybe your freshman year, we read them quite often. But we've been doing crime reports like this on higher education campuses for years. So I guess what I missed is what's changing? Is it not statutory required and they've just been doing it, or how does that work?
Representative Ogles.
Thank you for that question. I'm not going to speculate the reason the reports have done the way they have, but there's a lot of universities that were reporting a lot of zeros across the board. So some of the data in that report is very low when you compare that to the national averages. We just want to be sure and verify that everything's being done right. It's included, and that information is given to the General Assembly, law enforcement, as well as the community.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objections to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2730 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 79, 16 nays.
House Bill 2730 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2271 by Representative Ogles and others relative to the administration of justice. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2682.
Representative Ogles moves substitute form Senate Bill 2682, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Ogles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2682 on third and final consideration.
Representative Ogles moves passage of Senate Bill 2682 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Finance, Ways and Means Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairlady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move adoption and I defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Chairlady Hazelwood moves adoption of House Amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, House Amendment 2 by Representative Ogles. Mr. Speaker, it was not timely filed. However, amendments correcting grammatical or typographical errors are exempt from the bill file, from the amendment filing deadline.
Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, there was a clerical error on the drafting, so this amendment simply changes the enacting date to the piece of legislation. Move to adopt.
Representative Ogles moves adoption of amendment number 2. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? We're voting on the board. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Amendment number 2 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Ogles, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This piece of legislation expands the statutes for which criminal asset forfeiture would apply in the state of Tennessee. Right now, we use criminal asset forfeiture for drug trafficking and also trafficking of human beings. This would expand it to include 10 new statutes, which are rape, aggravated rape, rape of a child, aggravated rape of a child, especially aggravated rape of a child, grave torture, kidnapping, aggravated kidnapping, and especially aggravated kidnapping. It also changes the way in which if we seize assets during the commission of a crime, this piece of legislation would first pay restitution to the victim before any court cost or any money was paid to agencies during the seizing process. But to the members, this is criminal asset forfeiture. It's not civil. It's only done towards those assets in the commission of the crime and only taken, seized. They're taken and seized, but only sold after a guilty verdict. I renew my motion.
Representative Ogles renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the sponsor of the piece of legislation, is this your last bill on the House floor?
Representative Ogles.
Quite possibly. There's 2 bills in finance. One's behind the budget. The other's on a special calendar.
I believe Leader Lamberth consulted. Leader Lamberth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In consultation with the finance chairman, who happens to be right here, this might very well be your last bill on the floor. So I just want to thank you. From the very first moment I met you, you have been a passionate advocate for victims of violent crime in this body. I hate that you're not running again. We will lose a voice for many of those out there that are voiceless. And I'm really wanting to stand and congratulate you on your last bill being just like many of the rest of the bills that you've had, where you have tried to very methodically make sure that the worst of the worst criminals out there are punished in a way that recognizes the actions that they have taken out on innocents out there. So, sir, I just rise today to say, hopefully this bill will pass and I'll be able to congratulate you on its passage, but mainly just congratulations on serving the state of Tennessee, and thank you for your service to us.
Representative Ogles.
Thank you for those kind words. I hope that applause will mean everybody's voting in the affirmative.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know how much it would annoy the sponsor if I ask him to yield, so I would not do that right now. But I would echo the majority leader's comments. You have been a tremendous asset to this body my entire tenure here, the short tenure we've had. And it's a little frustrating to see you not coming back, because I just almost got you figured out. And now we'll have to do that all over again. But thank you again for your dedication to some really good legislation. You think outside the box, but you're always looking out for victims, and it will be greatly missed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2682 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Powers aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
Senate Bill 2682 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2294 by Leader Love relative to financial literacy instruction.
Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2294 on third and final consideration.
Representative Love moves passage. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chair Lady Moody moves adoption. Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Love, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as we talk about efforts to enhance the educational experience of all of our students, this particular piece of legislation would urge our schools to look at including financial literacy in the components that they teach our children. We talk about the way that finances are changing now. We're looking at digital currency. We need to also make sure our children understand the importance of saving, the importance of setting aside money. And this will also help them as they progress from middle school to high school. Many of them may be going straight from high school to career. And so I thought this would be a good piece of legislation to start them in middle school with an opportunity to have more financial literacy. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Love renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection? Oh, Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Representative Love.
Yes, sir.
Representative Towns.
Representative Lowe, obviously from your day in school, my day in school, they taught us nothing about money at all. Nothing at all, but maybe get a job and how to work and save for a house and maybe a car. But really understanding money was something that eluded us. Not even in college did they teach us about the workings of money. You being a man of the cloth, the book talks about money quite a bit because it's so integral and so important in how we're going to live our lives, whether we're on the right side of the law, whether we're able to really meet our obligations. So hopefully we can track this and see what it does for our young people for the future in terms of how they manage their money, watch their credit, whether or not they're going to start investing in real estate real early, okay, and change their lot in life, because it could potentially, as I think, help us to address the poverty issues in our country. Everybody in this country needs to understand money, period. So thanks for bringing the piece of legislation. Long time overdue. Thank you, sir.
Representative Love.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2294 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
House Bill 2294 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2600 by Representative McKenzie and others relative to thresholds for competitive sealed bids.
Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2600 on third and final consideration.
Representative McKenzie moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment removes a section from the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further action.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative McKenzie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill will enable local government to continue to provide effective and efficient local government operations while balancing those attributes with transparency and accountability. This bill simply keeps up with our current pricing situation and increases the threshold over which public advertising sealed competitive bids are required from $25,000 to $50,000. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative McKenzie renews the motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, waiting on the Senate to take further action on this, I'd like to make a motion to roll this for 2 weeks.
That's a proper motion, proper second. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, roll 2 weeks. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1860 for Chairman Haston and others, relative performance measures. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1890.
Chairman Haston moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1890, properly second, without objection. So ordered. Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1890 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Haston moves passage of Senate Bill 1890 on third and final consideration, properly second. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Education and Instruction Committee Amendment number 1.
Chair Lady Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is allow teachers the ability to use formative assessments like our state-adopted benchmark test and state-approved universal screeners as a component in the teacher evaluations. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Haston renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor of Senate Bill 1890 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Faison, aye. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
Senate Bill 1890 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1891 by Chairman Haston, relative to coordinated school health. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1888.
Chairman Haston moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1888, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Haston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1888 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Haston moves passage of Senate Bill 1888 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right now, in LEA's unused coordinated school health funds revert back to the general fund. This bill allows the funds to stay within the coordinated school health program and be used for approved coordinated school health programs in other LEAs. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Haston renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1888 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Hardaway, aye. Kumar, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 1888 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2300 by Representative Haston, relative to the basic education program.
Chairman Haston, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2300 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Haston moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
No further amendments, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Haston, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is requires a high school student who completes an early high school graduation program to be counted as enrolled for the remainder of the school year, thus protecting LEAs from funding loss. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Haston renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2300 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
House Bill 2300, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2149 by Chairman Halford and others relative to the Carroll County watershed. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Halford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2402.
Chairman Halford moves substitute conform to Senate Bill 2402, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Halford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2402 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Halford moves passage of Senate Bill 2402 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Grills, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. I move for adoption of the amendment and defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Vice Chairman Grills moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably second. And any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting House Amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Leader Lamberth. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move adoption.
Representative Lamberth moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably second. And any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, all those in favor, we're on the board. All those in favor of amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Whitson, aye. Hodges, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Amendment number 2 adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Halford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2149 transfers control of the Carroll County 1,000-acre recreation lake to TWRA and moves it away from the Carroll County Watershed Authority. Currently, the Carroll County Watershed Authority is responsible for the care and oversight of the lake. Over the past few years, it's become apparent that the management of this state asset would be better if it were housed in another authority. Through conversations over the past few months with Senator Stevens, myself, the governor's office, TWRA, and FNA, a solution was created. There's a line item in the governor's proposed budget that would eliminate debt currently owed by the lake, on the lake by the locals. That amount is found in section B28 of 11 million, which would adjust slightly upward to match the exact debt amount with a supplemental budget. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Halford renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman, a couple questions, if you don't mind. Just kind of go with me here for a moment. How long have you served in the State House of Representatives?
Chairman Halford.
14th year.
Leader Lamberth.
Your 14th year. That's a whole lot of service to the great state of Tennessee. How long have you chaired the Agriculture Committee?
Chairman Halford.
I believe that would be 10.
Leader Lamberth.
Well, Chairman, in that amount of time, I know you always very carefully look over the amendments that are placed on any particular bill. We pulled a fast one on you. You may not have looked at Amendment 2 very closely, but what the Second Amendment that just passed this floor unanimously does is instead of the name Carroll County 1,000-acre lake, if this passes and becomes law, it will forever be known as Lake Halford. Sir, thank you for your service to the great state of Tennessee.
Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And given that, Mr. Sponsor, I just wanted to ask you a question. I changed my question here a little bit, but are you more comfortable with Lake Halford being under the jurisdiction of TWRA than the Watershed Association?
Chairman Halford.
Yeah, yes.
Representative Clevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, I don't know if this is your last bill or not, but having the opportunity to serve on the Agriculture Committee for a short period of time from the other side of the aisle, I greatly appreciate your service. You provided valuable leadership. You were always kind and fair to everyone on your committee, including us Democrats. So thank you so much for your service.
Chairman Alford.
Here. I'm almost speechless, not quite. I would just like to say it's been an absolute honor from the time that I have walked through those doors back there. And I remember my very first time that I stood here, and I was a whole lot more scared than I am now. But I was pretty scared then, but it's been an honor and a privilege to serve with all of you that have gone before me, all of you that I have served with since you have come into the House. Thank you for allowing me to serve with you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I don't want to take anything away from the moment, but I do want you to know I supported this amendment, but maybe for slightly a different reason, because I've always thought that Carroll County Thousand Acre Lake was just much too long of a name.
Representative Shaw at Leader Lambert's desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, I just want to say to you that I've had the opportunity to serve that whole 10-year period with you. I've never had a chairman like you before. I never walked into your committee and felt like I was a Democrat and you was a Republican. I walked in feeling like we were working together for a good cause. And I want you to know that I think you're the best in the whole wide world. Thank you for serving. Thank you.
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd just like to echo, for the time that I've been here, Curtis has just been the epitome of what a state representative should be. And I rise in his defense. People were saying, how could he not know it's on the marked calendar? Well, somebody took that page out of his marked calendar. So and he's like me, he's old school. He doesn't look on the iPad that often. So for that reason, Mr. Chairman, you're totally absolved for not knowing what that amendment was, but it's been a pleasure to serve with you.
Chairman Hoffman.
My leader over here explicitly, he told me earlier today, he said, don't worry about number 2. I've got that taken care of. So.
Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2402 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
Senate Bill 2402 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed by objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2184 by Representative Garrett and others relative to driving under the influence. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 2434.
Representative Garrett moves substitute conform to Senate Bill 2434. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2434 on third and final consideration.
Representative Garrett moves passage of Senate Bill 2434 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 is not in the Senate bill, and it makes the bill. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I move adoption of House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1 and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Kershaw moves adoption of House Amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of House Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this legislation is an overhaul of our interlock program, which is in the When someone receives a DUI and they're convicted of a DUI, they have to have a device connected to their car. They blow in it to make sure they're not inebriated at the time they're trying to drive their vehicle. So this legislation just updates, clarifies, and makes important additions to this legislation in the interlock systems. And it is an administration bill. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I renew my motion.
Representative Garrett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Dixie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, right now, what are the requirements in order for you to have an interlock installed on your vehicle?
Representative Garrett.
The requirements are if you are convicted of a DUI, and that's part of the DUI sentence, you've got to have that interlock on your device. That's what the current legislation is.
Chairman Dixon.
Is it for your first DUI or is it after the second DUI? Just ask for clarification.
Representative Garrett.
It's for all of them.
Chairman Dixon.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if the amendment corrected this or not, or even addressed this, but right now, currently, if you're on a program and you're within, and let's say you offend or you have a technical violation, or you breathe dirty or whatever on that, what, you have to start all over again from day one, or how does it, or is it just after the 120 days?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you for that question. That actually is a part of this legislation, is that it grants more flexibility in that situation. If there's some sort of violation, the code currently is a little bit strict, but this grants more flexibility in that exact situation you mentioned.
Chairman Dixon.
One last question. So who pays for this? Is this out of the pocket of the offender, or how is this program paid for? Because I'm assuming there's a cost to this program.
Representative Garrett.
It's usually the offender in this situation.
Chairman Dixon.
One last question. Like currently, how many companies can apply this interlock? How many companies across Tennessee can apply the interlock device to a car?
Representative Garrett.
I'm not certain as to if there's a cap on how many, but there's dozens of companies now that provide this service to the state of Tennessee.
Chairman Dixie.
Oh, you said there are dozens? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2434 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Gillespie, aye. Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 75, 16 nays, 2 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2434, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. If I object, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2178 by Representative Reedy and others related to images captured by the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2428.
Representative Reedy moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2428. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2428 on the third and final consideration.
Representative Reedy moves passage of Senate Bill 2428 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up first amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kershaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1's in the Senate bill. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Reedy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to ensure that the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency can lawfully capture and use imagery from an unmanned aircraft system, a UAS, for the emergency management purpose. UAS imagery would provide TEMA and the state of Tennessee a safer, cheaper, and more streamlined method for conducting emergency response, damage assessment, and disaster recovery operations. This proposal would be a new provision under the code Code annotated 39-13902, the state's primary statute for defining the lawful capture of images using UASs in the state of Tennessee. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Reedy renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2428, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Senate Bill 2428 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2907 by Speaker Sexton and Chairman Williams, an act to create and establish an authority for and behalf on the county of Cumberland and the city of Crossville and the water utility districts in the region to be known as the Cumberland Plateau Water Authority, and to authorize all necessary powers in connection therewithin.
Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage on third and final consideration of House Bill 2907.
Chairman Williams moves passage, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment rewrites the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the clerk did a fantastic job describing what this bill does. It stands up the Cumberland Plateau Water Authority. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Williams renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2907 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
House Bill 2907 having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 757 by Chairman White.
Chairman White, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to roll House Bill 757 to next week's calendar.
Monday.
Monday.
All right, without objection, roll to Monday's calendar. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 204 by Leader Camper, relative to discrimination. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 136.
Leader Camper moves substitute conform Senate Bill 136, probably second. Without objection, so ordered. Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 136 on third and final consideration.
Leader Camper moves passage of Senate Bill 136 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Commerce Committee Amendment 1 rewrites the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for an explanation.
Chairman Vaughn moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Chairman Zachary. Mr. Speaker, is not timely filed. Pursuant to our rules, the sponsor of the amendment is allowed a 1-minute explanation.
Representative Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After consulting with Leader Camper and making a few changes to this amendment that she was agreeable to, I move to adopt. Move for consideration.
You've heard the motion. We are voting for consideration of amendment number 2. All those in favor of considering amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays, 3 present, none voting.
In accordance with Rule 60B, having received the necessary 2/3 vote, the motion to consider amendment number 2 prevails. Representative Zachary, you're recognized on your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I defer to the sponsor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Representative Zachary moves adoption of amendment number 2. Proper motion, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Leader Camper, do you want to discuss the amendment or say anything about the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members, we're going to adopt the amendment, and then I've agreed to roll it a week and bring it up next week.
All righty then. Any objection to the question? Question's been called. All those in favor of adopting House floor amendment number 2, when the bell rings, all those in favor vote aye. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, no nays, 3 present, not voting.
Amendment number 2 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request we roll this 1 week.
Without objection, roll 1 week. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2875 by Leader Camper, relative to pregnant women who are incarcerated.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to adopt Senate House Bill 2875 on third and final consideration.
Leader Camper moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up first amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment does rewrite the bill. We'll defer to the sponsor for further explanations. We move to adopt.
Chairman Keesling moves adoption of amendment number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's one issue related to this bill after adopting the amendment. And again, I'm working with the sponsor on addressing that concern, so I'm going to roll this 1 week.
Without objection, rolled 1 week. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2840 by Leader Camper and others relative to 10K. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to substitute and reform the Senate Bill 2319.
Leader Camper moves substitute forms to Senate Bill 2319 without objection. So ordered. Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2319 on third and final consideration.
Leader Camper moves passage of Senate Bill 2319 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Leader Camper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and members, Senate Bill 2319 is a bill that not only helps save lives, but it provides an opportunity to have people, particularly those with mental health, have an opportunity to get the services they need without clogging up our emergency rooms. This legislation is based on a program that's currently being used by Memphis EMS. It makes sure that the person gets the mental health care that they need at the place that they need to get to in a non-emergency situation and get the best results that they need. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, if enacted, it would help reduce costs, discouraging unavoidable transports to emergency room hospitals and departments. It'll encourage higher frequency of treatment at the scene, either telehealth, and transports to alternative health care settings as appropriate. It will also provide greater flexibility to ambulance care providers to address the emergency healthcare needs of TennCare recipients by implementing local agency-approved physician-directed protocol systems to dispatch either basic and/or advanced medical support vehicles in a variety of response configurations to render assistance to TennCare recipients in an emergency situation. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Leader Camper renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2319 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, the same member which changed their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 2319 received constitutional majority. I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion for consideration is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1665 by Chair Lady Hazelwood relative to estates. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1680.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 1680 without objection. So ordered. Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1680 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves passage of Senate Bill 1680 on third and final consideration. 5 seconds. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill simply is seeking to address, it was brought to me by a chancellor back in Hamilton County, And there are situations sometimes when a business has a sole proprietorship or an LLC, and the person who is running the business passes away. There's a period of time between that death and the process in the courts. If there is no succession plan in place, then the business can literally go under in that period of time. This bill would simply allow the courts to set up a temporary receiver that would help the business, help determine whether the business needed new management during that period of time or needed to be sold. But again, it's protecting the assets. Oftentimes, that would be the main asset of that decedent. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chair Hazelwood renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1680 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member cast their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Senate Bill 1680 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. Motion for consider table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular calendar, Mr. Speaker.
Next calendar, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Call up first message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1638 relative to the Historical Commission. Mr. Speaker, on April 4th, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 1638 for Senate Bill 2349, adopted Amendment 1 and passed House Bill 1638 as amended.
Chairman Todd, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Amendment number 1.
I need you in the well. All right, there you go. Chairman Todd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Todd moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 74, 18 nays.
Senate Amendment number 1 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurring without objection. The motion for consider table. Call up next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1871 by Chairman Holsey and others relative to public health. Mr. Speaker, on March 31st, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 1871 for Senate Bill 1982, adopted Amendments 2 and 1, and passed House Bill 1871 as amended.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Senate changed the word natural immunity to acquired immunity and added the word or to document laboratory tests showing antibody, memory cell, or T-cell immunity. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I move to concur in Senate Amendment numbers 1 and 2.
Chairman Holsey moves to concur in Senate Amendment numbers 2 and 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 2 and 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Crawford, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 75, 20 nays.
Senate Amendment number 2 and 1 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in without objection. The motion for consider table. Call up next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2128 by Chairman Crawford and others relative to election laws. Mr. Speaker, on April 4, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 2128 for Senate Bill 2245, adopted Amendment 1, passed House Bill 2128 as amended.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is deleting sections 5 and 6 out of the current bill. I move to concur with the Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Chairman Dixie, you're recognized.
What exactly does this bill do?
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It requires you to be a U.S. citizen to vote in any election, locals or state, federal.
All right. Any further discussion? Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 83, 10 nays.
Senate Amendment number 1, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurring without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2621 by Representative Harris relative to foster care. Mr. Speaker, on April 4th, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 2621 for Senate Bill 2309, adopted Amendment 1, and passed House Bill 2621 as amended.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in Senate Amendment number 1.
Representative Harris moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, 2 nays, 2 present on vote.
Senate Amendment number 1, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurring without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2662 by Representative Hall relative to pharmacists. Mr. Speaker, on April 4th, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 2662 for Senate Bill 2322, adopted Amendment 2, and passed House Bill 2662 as amended.
Representative Hall, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This restores the provision of present law that requires the Commissioner of Health or the Commissioner's designated representative to serve as the board's executive officer. I move to concur with Senate Amendment number 2.
Representative Hall moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 2, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 2, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurring without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Representative Hurt, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate consideration of just SJR number 1521.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption.
Senate Joint Resolution 1521 by Representative Hurt, a resolution to commend William L. Sunnyhouse for his honorable and astute service as Haywood County trustee.
You've heard the caption. Any objections? Whoop, maybe so. Hang on, time out. Very good. You heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules are suspended. Representative Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to concur in SJR number 1521.
Representative Hart moves to concur in Senate Joint Resolution 1521, probably second. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I hereby declare it concurred in. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After consultation with the Democratic leader, I move that House Bill 1036 be heard in the State Government Committee this week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have some messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House. House Bill 2667, substitute for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House. House Bill 2638, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House. House Bill 1946, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House. House Bill 2537, substituted for the Senate bill on the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to transmit to the House Senate Bill 1782. The Senate adopted a conference committee report and made it the action of the Senate.
Thursday's message calendar. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's been a lack of a meeting of one very important caucus this session. We are going to convene the Bald Man Caucus after session this evening. The Bald-Headed Man Caucus will convene. We have one piece of business to take care of. We are going to be considering if Representative Andrew Farmer will be admitted to the club. As well, the Bald-Headed Caucus will be taking a photo in the well after session. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. If Farmer joins, please let us know. Representative Howe, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I want to announce that a young lady named Ryan Howard, who is from Bradley County, played for the Bradley County girls basketball team, the Lady Bears, and led that team to the 2018 state championship. Has just been chosen as the #1 overall draft pick by the WNBA.
Representative Vaughn, can you top that one?
No, sir, I can't. Ladies and gentlemen, on Thursday, pre-session, the University of Memphis State is going to be here on the Capitol, and you have a chance to stop by at the Legislative Lounge to greet our new president, Bill Hardgrave, our athletic director, Laird Veach, head football coach, Ryan Silverfield, head basketball coach, Anthony Hardaway, as well as one of the few assistant coaches who have been inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. Coach Larry Brown is also going to be here with them. So everybody stop by on Thursday before session and say hello to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brigham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow will not be a boring day on the Hill. It is Coffee County Day on the Hill, and all of you and your staff are invited to lunch at the 8th floor. So it'll be great food. Thank y'all.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to my good friend, Representative Hawk, and to the members of the Bald-Head Caucus, there just happened to be 2 pays on sale. They're going 3 for 1. So you all can stop by my desk and we'll make sure you all have a spare. To your Bald-Headed Caucus member, please come by.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And on behalf of all of the members from Shelby County, there is a great professional basketball team that is kicking hindquarters and headed to the playoffs, and they are called the Memphis Grizzlies. That is the Tennessee team, Memphis Grizzlies. Thank you, sir.
Larry Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members, I wanted to announce on behalf of Senator Lamar that Wednesday, 12 o'clock in House Hearing Room 2, there will be a maternal health caucus meeting. And then Thursday, there is a diaper drive. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members.
Thank you. Representative Brigham.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A technical correction. Coffee County Day on the Hill is Wednesday, not tomorrow. So don't show up tomorrow, but be hungry on Wednesday.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. Just a note to Joe Towns to quit hating on the bald and beautiful caucus.
Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for those tonight, while you are finishing up your financial disclosures, and if you have some free time, tune in to Food Network. One of the members from my district who owns Chef Town's Underground Cafe was the winner from the other day. And so we want to celebrate her, and I want to say thank you so much. So please, please, please watch her on tonight.
Very nice. All right. Any further announcements? Representative Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have adjusted to the idea of being a part of the ball caucus. They let me stand in front. I would like to rename the caucus as the Bald Eagles.
Chairlady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call for the question.
Only a bald person can do that right now. All right. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 97 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. on Thursday, April 14th, 2022.
Without objection, the House stands recessed till 9 a.m. on Thursday, April 14th, 2022.